So there's this thing that happens.
Yeah.
When you speak, you hear your head voice. You hear the reverberations that are basically coming out of your skull, along with the voice that comes out of your mouth. Other people only hear the voice that's coming out of your mouth. So there's a difference. And it's kind of like looking in a mirror that's reversed, or taking like a selfie cam that that keeps the perspective, that flips it so that you look like how you look to other people. So when you look at the photograph of yourself that's like from the point of view of someone else, you're like, oh no, that doesn't even look like me. Well, of course it does. And the way you sound to other people is the same sound that you hear back when you listen to yourself recorded. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, or actors who see themselves on screen or television for the first time are like, oh no, that's like horrible. That's not me. Well, of course it is. So I get it. Like, but take it from me, you sound like, you know, a normal voiced person without anything to be nervous about. And, there you go.
All right.
So yeah, we're talking about some rap music today, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Specifically the artist, Aesop Rock, not to be confused with ASAP Rocky. Totally different. Completely stylistically different. Although, both based out of New York, but that's a totally different story. In fact, in the Wikipedia for Aesop, it says right at the top, not to be confused with ASAP Rocky. That would be funny. Like, if because I don't know how much overlap there is between those two fan bases. Probably not a lot.
Right? You got real hip hop connoisseurs and just bottom feeders.
The bottom feeders, right? Oh man, make a bunch of people mad now. So, and then of course, also talking about LP, now famously known as one half of the Run the Jewels duo. You know, I kind of hope they don't make a fourth album.
Why? Why is that?
Because I think 1 was good. I think 2 was really great. And I think 3 is at the level of 1. And I don't see them progressing beyond like the artistic level of Run the Jewels 2.
I see. You just don't want to see a decline.
I'd rather not see a decline. I'd rather artists that I like go out on top rather than try to pander to what their audience might want next.
Yeah. Do you think they're running out of material?
Well, their themes are kind of limited, but I don't know if that's the nature of. I think that LP himself alone has a huge variety of things that he could touch on. But I think with the addition of Killer Mike, that focus gets limited to a certain both stylistic and content that is hard to break out of, because I think LP is just a lot more versatile than Mike. I don't know.
Yeah.
It could be wrong, but that seems to be the case.
Yeah, I can see how that is.
But I know that it's kind of getting beyond what we wanted to talk about a little bit, but I know from past conversations that these two, Aesop Rock and LP, are essentially your favorite like hip hop rap artists.
Yeah, I mean, they're really profound lyricists, and they're wordsmiths. You know, they know how to put together a verse.
Definitely. There's a quote by Aesop Rock about his lyrical style in an interview that I pulled up, and he says that because sometimes his lyrics are very prone to subjective interpretation by people who don't know what he's talking about, specifically because he does use just an interesting variety of words and metaphors that may not be completely obvious to the unaccustomed listener or who don't know his background.
Yep, it's pretty far-reaching.
Right. And so what he said was that, quote, it's probably because it's not the most accessible music in all the world. It may pose a slight challenge to the listener beyond your average pop song. I'm no genius by a long shot, but these songs are not nonsensical. That's pretty preposterous. I'd have to be a genius to pull off this many nonsensical records over people's eyes. It's not exactly fast food, but when people pretend I'm just spewing non sequiturs and gibberish, I can't help but think they simply haven't listened and are regurgitating some rumor they've heard about me, even if it's not laid out in perfect sentences. Is any rap? You'd have to be an idiot not to at least grasp a few things from these songs, or have had no interest in pulling anything from them in the first place. Close quote. So, yeah, I mean, I've heard that before, that he's too wordy or too esoteric, or that it's just like word salad.
Yeah.
But to his point, that would be kind of amazing if someone was able to maintain a career just spouting like nonsensical garbage. Like,
and let's be completely fair here. All the mainstream, basically, you know, they maintain their career doing just that.
well, it seems like maybe like more than ever, but perhaps without the dense lyrical content. The popular rappers who are talking gibberish, or these days, are just like onomatopoeia sounds, like the sounds of tires squealing.
Yeah.
So, that only, like all the ad libs and things like that can only go so far. And I don't know if we're at like peak trap yet, but it appears that, I mean, if it was interesting at all to begin with, like everybody's heard every version of this new super dumbed down, high tempo, like style. I mean, I can't imagine anyone coming up with something new on that, like trap rap basis. That would be at all different from anything we've already heard.
It's all recycled. It's all been done before, and there's nothing unique about it, and it just gets old. Like anybody who's actually into lyricism and hip hop, like they can't stand that stuff, and it wears one down to hear it all the fucking time on the radio.
Sure. And so it's refreshing that these two guys are still active and popular, at least to a certain extent, to a certain large minority audience. And I don't think that's going to end anytime soon. I mean, both Aesop and LP are in their mid-40s now. Like a lot of like old rappers, or which is kind of interesting. We've never really had this experience before with people in this genre
maturing,
hitting like 40, even 50 years old, like even people like E40 is 50.
Yeah.
Right. It's amazing. Like he still is like, he's another guy who, is very subtly, or maybe more subtly, verbose than a lot of, certainly a lot more than the like typical West Coast rappers. He's the guy who came up with a lot of the kind of terminology in hip hop, like phrasing that is kind of interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know.
I have a quote. I remember from Face Melter in one of Aesop Rock's songs. He has a quote in there where, I mean, I'm going to read it out right now.
Sure.
He says, "So when the disc changer goes from guns to space, it is not an attempt to fake credibility for the public. But fuck it, it's Ace Rock, 6 records of gibberish, right? He's trying too hard to be weird and different, right? Right. Or could it possibly just maybe be his lessons can't be summed up in a linear set of pop culture references? Wow."
That's great.
End quote.
Yeah, that kind of says it all right there. Is it too complicated for your jaded ears to even like get into, or have you been that dumbed down by the culture that you can't even begin to understand something a little bit more in depth than the typical trite garbage that you might hear from anybody else?
Yeah, he's a reader. You can tell from his unique diction that he's an avid reader, and he spends a lot of time, I guess, like putting together his verses. I would assume like some of his verses, not all, but some of it looks like it took a lot of time to create.
Oh, I would imagine, because there's so much going on lyrically that it's just not the kind of thing that someone would typically be able to write out just on the first go. Like,
Yeah,
I would imagine there's a lot of like brainstorming and like free writing, and then going back and editing and then changing things. It's more like perhaps more like writing a short story rather than a song, but then putting it into that song style format with bars and verses.
I've learned a lot from him, and it's just crazy. I mean, some of his lyrical content is like so, it's so deep. He probably spends a lot of time just coming up with the concepts of of his tracks, you know, and I've listened to some of his songs that I've been hearing for over a decade, and like I would go through a new experience. I remember there was this one period in my life where I was going through a lot of experiences, and as I would go through each experience, I would remember one of his lyrics. It would pop into my head, and I would be like, "Oh, so that's what he meant."
Oh, wow.
Over a decade, like even over a decade of hearing the same song of his, it makes more and more sense every day, you know?
Sure. Well, there might be a reason for that. In May of 2014, like 4 years ago,
Yeah.
this guy named Matt Daniels, he found that Aesop Rock's vocabulary in his music surpassed 85 other major hip hop and rap artists, as well as the work of Shakespeare
Yeah.
and Moby Dick. He has by far the largest vocabulary in hip hop, and according to this little article, to build up his vocabulary, he reads a lot of news and science articles and writes down all of the words that he finds interesting. So if you're reading something and something catches his attention, he'll write that word down and save it.
Yeah.
So as you're going through life and you've heard all these songs over this period of, a decade, of course the most interesting things, as far as like the most interesting words that this guy's reading and putting down in his lyrics, when interesting things happen to you, you're naturally going to reflect back on these unique lines and this lyrical content that you didn't know was speaking to you until kind of after the fact. And
Yeah.
that's, he says he's not a lyrical genius, but I would beg to differ for that very reason. Like most songs that you hear, it doesn't work that way, I guess. It works like you hear the song again and then reflect back on a feeling. But you're saying you have a feeling and then you reflect back on the song or the lyrical content of that particular song, like a line of his would pop into your head, like, oh, that's what he meant, or oh, I'm going through the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is like, that's amazing.
Yeah, and it's like as I gained more life experience, I understood more and more of his content, and it seems like he's very well read, but you have to have life experience to fully and a lot of it to fully understand his content, and I think
Sure.
that's the key, and that's what a lot of people. I mean, I'm sure you could give his work to someone that's really well read, and they still wouldn't understand the thing.
Right. No, that's probably true. Yeah, I've liked him for a long time. When I found his the Float album at a used CD store back in I guess it was like 2003.
Yeah.
I found Float, and I couldn't stop listening to it. Like,
that's my favorite.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing.
Yeah.
Because it was so different and
it's
so much of a puzzle.
Mm-hmm. It's a classic, and it even has classical music in the beats of it. He composed that. Like, that's a masterpiece that I think he will never that's one masterpiece that I think he will never be able to top again. And that's just how I feel. I mean, he may progress in other ways, but that is a classic that I think he will never be able to touch. And
well, it was very personal. Like it was really kind of an examination of his life as a teenager.
yeah,
In a lot of ways, he was. I mean, he was only a couple of years out of college, and so he was reflecting back on, which he does a lot, but more specifically, like his like teenage years growing up. Whereas Labor Days, you know, a year or two later, was much more focused on like American society, wage slavery, where he was now kind of launched into the real world, so to speak. After school, he's back. He's like now he's actually out there, and
the 9-to-5ers anthem.
right, the 9-to-5ers, exactly. And my favorite, I don't know if it's my favorite, but like certainly like one of my favorites is his Bazooka Tooth album.
Bazooka Tooth. Oh yeah.
Right, and I don't know. I just like the energy of it. I think that it has a lot to do with. I think that my love of that album in particular has a whole lot to do with the other guy that we're kind of talking about, and it's LP's production of it. Like it's just so noisy and in your face and powerful.
Very, now in retrospect that I think about it, it was very toxic. That was a toxic album.
Right, like a big departure from kind of the more sedate, I guess, if that's the right word, sedate instrumentals of his previous two albums. Bazooka just came out like just that first track, like it's all jumbled up and like it mixes into a different song that's like on a different beat and it's all blended weird and Bazooka Tooth, baby. Like he was like, I guess it's about my conception of like the whole Bazooka Tooth concept was that, oh, now he's gonna spit hard, like now it's time to like get angry, like after going through the first two records where
there was a lot of resentment,
more introspective. This was way more like out there, with songs like No Jumper Cables.
Yeah. One other album that I really liked, which I kind of think was a classic up there with, even though others may disagree, I think it was up there with Float, was probably one of his first, if not the first album that he released, music for Earthworms.
Oh, right. His I mean, he did two records, right? He did music for Earthworms and then the Appleseed EP.
Oh, the Appleseed.
Yeah. Right. What's the line in one of the songs where he talks about? I think it's in Bazooka Tooth where he talks about how people want him to go remake music for Earthworms.
Oh yeah, he does mention that.
He's like, no, I've done with that. That's years ago.
That's funny.
It's so good. Check this. It's so funny. And just like looking at this stuff, music for Earthworms sold. You ready for this? It sold over 300 copies.
That's it?
That's it. That's it. At the time. I'm sure now
Yeah.
that number's gone up significantly, but at the time, that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And he was still in his last year of college, where he was getting his bachelor's degree in photography or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, that's where he met Blockhead in school. And I don't know. Blockhead, like that musical guy.
Yeah.
His beats are kind of sound like his name in a lot of ways, and they're
choppy.
Sometimes they're very choppy and stiff, and I wonder sometimes if that held back Aesop's popularity a little bit. I'm not saying that in a super negative way, but that's a criticism I've heard from other people too, is that Blockhead's beats are they're too sterile, and they're not bouncy enough. They're too blocky.
Yeah, I can see how that is. I mean, I think he personally makes beats for Aesop, and that's all he does. And I don't see his beats as something that you could play in any type of party environment, really.
Right, or have anybody else rap over the top of them successfully.
Yeah,
you can't even, right.
You can't put other lyrics to it. You're right.
Maybe because most other rappers aren't as lyrically dynamic, which kind of the music provides a nice even platform in a lot of ways for him to be so verbally dynamic, perhaps too. Because if the music was overly interesting, it could take away from kind of some of what he's saying. Perhaps, I don't know. That's a criticism that I could at least kind of listen to, and because it's not based on some kind of weird throwaway ignorance, it's just nonsense, or
And I've heard his beats are a little underdeveloped too, kind of it's like homemade beats, you know?
Right, and I think maybe certainly, I mean, that of course must be done on purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's a sound engineer and they know what they're doing, but I guess they do it for that effect, particularly to make it maybe a little more indie, and not mainstream,
Well, yeah, I mean, because the music isn't performed in a vacuum. I mean, the people that make music have heard other music and know what it sounds like in relation, to the other stuff that's around. You can't escape it. If you hear something, you automatically have to relate it to something that you already heard. Of course it sounds in a particular way because that's how it was designed. I mean, musical criticism is tricky anyway, at least for me, in a lot of ways, because you only have so many notes, you only have so many rhythms that are applicable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just reassembly of the same sounds in different ways. So I find it hard to criticize the creation of a musical piece. But on the other hand, I know what I like and what I don't like aesthetically to my ear, and there's no escaping that. We don't get to choose what we like, which is interesting to me. When you hear something or you see something, you either automatically like it or don't, or you're somewhere in the middle. But it's not like you consciously say to yourself, "Oh, I'm choosing to like that," which would be weird.
Yeah.
What? So let's talk a little bit about LP.
Mm.
Now, I was introduced to him really primarily as a producer.
Solo?
Initially.
Okay.
Like I never, and I guess that was really with the like Def Jux label and the compilation that they produced. What was that?
The Orphanage?
Well, it was that compilation of all the Def Jux artists, and I don't remember what it was called exactly. But he basically produced the whole thing, and it was really interesting because I had never heard of most of these people, and
yeah,
and then it was really on Bazooka Tooth that I heard him on what We're Famous. Is that what the name of the song was?
Yeah. He did have a really good verse on that song.
Yeah. And then I kind of lost track of him for a while.
I think it sounded like in that song he was taking shots at Slug from Atmosphere.
Oh, right, because they had some early collaboration, right?
Yeah, he didn't mention any names, but it just for some reason what he was describing sounded like he was going at Slug from Atmosphere, and then later on they broke off, and Aesop decided to go with Rhymesayers and Slug.
Oh, right.
And
right.
I think he may have saw this coming, and he may have been a little, shooken up by it. So he decided, I'll throw the first blow, But
was it that Aesop was being somehow mismanaged or mistreated or by Rhymesayers? And so LP's like, nah, get over here, like, and, F those guys. I mean, there's still some mystery as far as I know about what happened
prompted that.
to that relationship, right?
Yeah.
Because it didn't last for very long.
Yeah, and the funny thing is they don't really even mention each other anymore. I mean, they don't even really say each other's names, but I've heard some songs where it sounds like they're talking about each other, but they're not really even mentioning each other.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, as far as like his rapping goes, LP,
yeah,
like I kind of gained an appreciation really when like Run the Jewels came out. When was that? 2011? No, 2013. Excuse me. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember here one verse that he did on this one song called "Gun for the Family." Have you heard that one?
I have.
Oh my God, that verse! I mean, both of them. What they did in that song was like black magic. The way they described whatever they were describing, it was just out of this world. You know what I mean?
Right. I'm gonna pull up the lyrics here.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, because honestly, I feel like I've lived through both of those verses, and most of them, like most of the parts of those verses, and that's why I say it. It seemed like they were doing black magic. It was just amazing.
Well, like, what are they talking about? It sounds like,
sounds like recovery to me. Sounds like, Aesop was, getting kicked out of places, and, it sounded like, what the song sounded like to me was, gun home, get home, get to the family, gun for the whole family, which is like, it could have two meanings. You know what I mean? Like, gun it home to your family, or gun for the whole family. You know what I mean?
right.
And
Right. I thought it was more about, frankly, about like, the after effects of, like 9/11.
oh no,
Where,
that song, it has to be for, about recovery, because the things that LP says and Aesop says in that song, game of slaves and saints, and then you have to like, just read it. You'll know what I'm talking about. That song is definitely about recovery. I didn't get any hints of 9/11 in there.
Interesting. Before, because the first line.
Mhm. Oh yeah. The box cutter stuff.
Before shooting troops is cooler than hula hoops.
Yep.
High noon was your basic who's who of brutal truth. Hot summer gun or box cutter slow dance. Turning young into a dozen paper dolls holding hands.
Yeah.
And then it's
that
popcorn. I mean, I don't know, there could be a debate about that, but
No, you're right about that. That was a reference to the 9/11 thing, but I think the song is based around recovery. I think the whole point of the song was the recovery theme.
Sure.
And
maybe in the broad sense.
LP, what does he say? He says, read LP's verse.
Tuned to Helimundo for action-packed blasphemy.
Yeah.
That big city translate your face till it atrophy. I let the Schadenfreude boy at actually deployed to void with grin to watch laughingly. Yeah, bitch. Pass the peas, it's a laughing. I can spell the tragedy when hatching. Happily, dispassionately passion. Alive with the madness of demise. Like, yes, the pain dazzles, man. Pass the popcorn.
That's also something that's mentioned in the Big Book of Recovery, AA.
Right.
And what was I gonna say? Damn it! Can you read that one more time? Sorry.
Oh, that in his first little few lines there. Tuned to Helimundo for action-packed blasphemy. Big city translate your face till it atrophy. I let the Schadenfreude boy cut out actually deployed to void with grin to watch laughingly. Yeah, bitch, pass the peas, it's a laughing. I can spell the tragedy when hatching. Happily, dispassionately passion. Alive with the menace of demise.
You know what I think he was referring to right there? That he can tell when someone's gonna go out before they even go out.
Interesting.
And
sure.
He was saying he's happily dispassionately patched in. That means he's introverted to a point where he doesn't give a crap. He might be living with a bunch of addicts or whatever in a recovery home, but he can sit there and watch it all day and watch people go in and out, and he doesn't give a crap.
Then it goes on. It says pass the popcorn. It's reality at its finest, and yet it still unravels at a pace like molasses. I guess the last of seconds before the worst of disasters stretch past us. Wouldn't you agree that it is fabulous? In the corridors of entrepot wars contort drastically tilted pitch. I adjust to climates of the wilderness, walk along my spine, take the pilgrimage up to the section that's reserved for the smirk of the coldest witness. Right?
Witnesses. Yeah.
Witnesses. Exactly.
Work. What did it say after that? Work.
Work, you motherfuckers. Hooray. There's all day to die. Innovate the mayhem with grace. the good form fall. Fuck it, I'm gonna warn y'all. Nah, I got the front row to the greatest entertainment that an angel never saw.
He's talking about those meetings that they have in recovery homes.
Yeah, right.
And when he says, walk along my spine, take the pilgrimage, I think he was talking to a manager of a recovery home. I think that's like, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. And
I mean, what I want to know is if other people, who hear this have a different take, because that would be fascinating to kind of hear other fans what people actually get out of these two guys' lyrics, because they're so dense and they're so filled with meaning that it's sometimes either hard to decipher or can take on multiple meanings.
Yeah.
And that's really where their art is.
Honestly, I remember in one of his songs, I think it's $4 Vike.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard that one from LP?
I have. Yeah.
Where he says, "Don't ever say you're not one of us." He said, "Let me pull up the lyrics. Give me 1 second."
Is that like a $4 pill?
Yeah, he's talking about Vicodins when they're $4, and everybody remembers this. This is when, as far as opiate addicts, like that's when the prices were good, and and
right.
'Cause now they sell them for even more nowadays, but that's when the price is really good. And
right.
He says,
back to dose me, back to hold the high closely, right?
Yeah, and that song, you could tell it was about just that, and in one of the lines, he goes,
for the Aggie with a baggie, with a bottle, with a smile, with a sip, with a swallow, and don't you ever try to say that you're not one of us, my love. We are the touched. We are the entrusted with the same tomorrow. We're all gonna die.
He's talking about the disease of addiction right there. He said, "Don't ever say that you're not one of us, my love. We are the touch. We're entrusted with the same tomorrow." Dude, that's so sinister in a way to say that as an addict. You know what I mean?
Well, sure. I mean, the whole thing is about self-destruction, and not just me, but you too, and we're going together.
Yeah, and
a
lot of it. Dude,
I'm living like a $4 vig, jumping off the world till I get there. A lot of trouble for a little bit of win.
Mm-hmm.
In the gasoline and sulfur and the sin, you cannot throw me into the briar patch, bitch. This is where I live. Like
in the pariah pad. You know what a pariah pad? No, what? I found the. I think those are wrong. I found I think he said pariah patch. And you know what a pariah is, right?
Sure. Sure, it's a cast like a
exactly
someone who's not worthy to be in the group. You're cast away.
Outcast,
sure, so you're an outcast, right?
Yeah. So I think you may have pulled up lyrics with an error in it, but that's what I heard, and that's what I think he meant. You know.
I think it would work either way too. For that.
Yeah. Right now I'm reading it off of Rap Genius.
Yeah, me too. How funny.
You are?
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyways,
unless he changes it could be different, but like
links
could be different.
I think a lot of his songs, if not most of them, I think pretty much most of his songs are made for people just like him. And he makes music just for specifically addicts.
You know, and
Earthworms. Yeah, and Aesop does too in a way. Aesop does too in a way. I remember in one of his songs he mentioned that he pulls change out of his back pocket for drunks, like a car, like a lowrider scrapes his belly or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him mentioning that, like he gives his spare change to drunks. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think yeah, they basically they make. I mean, their target consumer base are addicts, or at least recovering addicts. But
well, they both had their very dark days for sure. Like whether they are addicts or not, or just have had emotional crises, or like with Aesop's mental breakdowns, they've both been in extremely dark places. And
Aesop has talked about needles and kicking, like he's talked about opiates one too many times, but he chooses to do it in ways that are pretty clever. Sometimes it doesn't even sound like he's talking about drugs, but I've heard him talking about sharing diseases with needles, and
right.
You know what I mean. The guy has really dark lyrics, and I know for a fact that he was an opiate addict, a heroin addict. I could tell from his lyrics, because there's no way a non-heroin addict would have ever written something like that. I mean, he talks about tar, and in one of his newest songs, he actually says heroin. So,
sure.
So I mean, in the beginning, he hit it pretty damn well with his lyrics. But later on, I guess he was like, who cares, you know?
Yeah. Well, that's no, I fully behind those ideas that both of them have done all of the things that people would imagine that someone who is in the grip of addiction would do, for sure. You can hear it, you can see it in their lyrics, you can see it in their beings. And I kind of want to, I kind of want to end this with because I read a Aesop Rock quote initially about his lyrics, and I kind of want to end this with a quote from LP, which has something to do with your kind of nervousness in the beginning about having this conversation, which is kind of cool. Like I didn't plan this, but it's kind of the way it wrapped up. And what LP said is that, quote, "First and foremost, I wanted to do it because it scared the shit out of me. And when I get offered the chance to be involved with something that scares me, I usually do it because I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to understand music as much as I can to become a better musician in general and work in different capacities."
Nice.
And this is something that you and also I are fairly new at. The idea of having a conversation like this, which we've had before, but never for public consumption.
Yeah.
You know, so I want to get better at talking about the things that we're interested in, which is kind of what you were nervous about, and I share that too. So I think it's a cool way to wrap it up regarding, like, you know, these people that we admire and think are artistic greats have the same kinds of apprehensions and self-doubt. And when something
people have.
Right, they're regular people. And when something is scary, like an opportunity does make him nervous, that maybe that's the thing that you need to go for, because, well, it's like
that's going to help you grow the most.
It's like people talk about in recovery. if you're uncomfortable, you're probably in the right place. You're probably doing the right thing.
Yep.
Because you're supposed to be uncomfortable. You know, it's cool.
Yep. And that's where you grow the most, when you're pushing yourself out of your comfort zone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, this was a cool conversation.
I appreciate you having me, man. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. This is the V2V Podcast, episode number 16, if you can believe it. I can't believe it. That's like that we've actually made it this far. And to the listeners out there, if you've made it this far, please give us a like and hit the subscribe button so we can continue to bring you interesting and cool content. And have a good night.
Peace.